When an entire country loses the internet, you probably picture a server failing, a data center going dark, some invisible glitch somewhere inside the cloud. But in 2023, Vietnam lost most of its connection to the outside world for a very different reason. And not because a server failed, because something snapped 2 kilometers beneath the sea. The fix wasn't a software patch. It wasn't a new machine in a rack. It was a ship. A specialized cable repair vessel, one of only a small fleet the entire planet depends on. And because that fleet was already stretched, Vietnam's cables weren't fully repaired until around 9 months later. That's the part almost nobody thinks about, because the internet isn't really in the cloud, it's on the floor of the ocean. And the system that keeps it alive is smaller, older, and far more fragile than most people realize. Here's the thing almost nobody is taught. Most intercontinental data doesn't travel by satellite, not your video calls, not financial transactions. It's not the traffic moving between data centers across oceans. It travels through cables lying on the sea floor. Roughly 95% of all intercontinental data moves through subsea cables drained on thin strands of glass fibre wrapped in steel and plastic, stretching across oceans for thousands of kilometers at a time. There are hundreds of these cable systems in service worldwide, adding up to well over 1 million kilometers of cable. And the strange part is how small they can be. A single cable carrying a huge share of the world's digital traffic can be just a few centimeters thick, about the width of a garden hose. That's what the entire digital world actually rests on, not a cloud. A physical line, a bundle of glass, lying in darkness across the sea floor. And laying it isn't cheap. A telecoms cable can cost tens of thousands of dollars for every kilometer installed, and across an entire ocean, that becomes a billion-dollar physical construction project. Now here's what most people get wrong. They assume a system this important must be almost indestructible. It's the opposite. Subsea cables break all the time. On average, there are around 200 cable faults every year. That's nearly 4 a week. And most of the time, the cause isn't dramatic at all. It isn't cyber war. And it isn't always sabotage. It's usually something much more ordinary. Fishing nets, ships dragging their anchors, equipment scraping across the seabed. That sounds alarming, but it's also exactly why the internet usually keeps working. The network is built with redundancy, so when one cable breaks, traffic simply reroutes through the others. The system sags, but it doesn't fall over. Most of the time is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because when a cable does break, fixing it is genuinely hard. You can't send a diver down 2 kilometers. You need a purpose-built repair ship. A floating factory that finds the fault, drags the cable up off the sea floor, cuts out the damaged section, splices in a new one, tests it, and lowers the whole thing back down. Slow, specialized, painstaking work. And this is the bottleneck. The entire planet, and every ocean, every route, every one of those hundreds of cable systems depends on a fleet of only around 60 repair ships. 60. To maintain the physical backbone of the entire global internet. And they aren't cheap. A new cable ship can cost around $100 million. They're specialized, they're expensive, and they're spread thin across entire oceans. So when several breaks happen at once, you wait in line. How long? When an earthquake struck near the Luzon Strait in 2006, it broke 6 of the 7 cables in the area, and it took 11 ships 49 days to bring the system back. Vietnam's 2023 outage dragged on for roughly 9 months before all 5 international routes were fully repaired. And in March 2024, During major outages off Africa, a single repair ship docked in Cape Town, the Leon Tavernan, was reported as the only vessel dedicated to serving the entire African coast. That's the point. The internet doesn't just depend on cables, it depends on the tiny industrial fleet that can repair them. And that fleet is aging. By one industry estimate, around half of all cable installation ships and 2/3 of maintenance vessels could reach the end of their working lives by 2040, while total cable mileage is projected to grow by nearly 50% over the same period. So the trend lines are moving in opposite directions. Data demand, climbing, cable mileage, growing. The repair fleet that holds it all together, shrinking and getting older. That's the physical layer bottleneck. And then there's the part that's become harder to ignore. Increasingly, not every cable break looks accidental. In the Baltic Sea, around Taiwan, and across parts of Northern Europe, there's been a run of cable incidents that governments are now watching far more closely. But this is exactly where the story has to be handled carefully, because the evidence rarely supports the most dramatic version. The total number of cable faults hasn't suddenly exploded, and proving sabotage is genuinely difficult. A ship can pass near a cable can break, but proving intent is another matter entirely. So the real story isn't that every cable break is an attack. The real story is that the repair system is already stretched to begin with. If accidental breaks are normal, and suspicious incidents tick up even slightly, all of that pressure lands on the same small, aging fleet. That's why governments are responding. NATO has launched a mission called Baltic Sentry to watch undersea infrastructure in the Baltic. The EU has introduced a cable security plan, and countries around the Pacific are rewriting their laws on cable protection. Because everyone is starting to understand the same thing. The internet's weakest point isn't always digital. Sometimes it's a cable, sometimes it's an anchor, and sometimes it's just the fact that the nearest repair ship is already booked. So if you're one of the handful of companies moving unimaginable amounts of data around the world, what do you actually do about all this? If your cloud regions, your AI systems, your video platforms, and your data centers all depend on this fragile ocean floor network, how do you protect yourself? You stop waiting for the old telecom system to build everything for you. You build your own. That's the shift, quietly reshaping the ocean floor right now. The companies laying some of the most important new cables are no longer the old telecom carriers. They're the tech giants. Google is now involved in dozens of subsea cable projects around the world. Amazon has announced Fastnet, its first fully self-owned subsea cable, running from Maryland to Ireland. And Meta is planning Project Waterworth, a single system intended to stretch around 50,000 kilometers and link 5 continents. This isn't just internet infrastructure anymore, it's AI infrastructure. Because AI doesn't only need chip, it needs data centers. Those data centers need power. And the data moving between them still has to cross oceans. So the cable routes increasingly follow the compute. They follow the cloud regions. They follow the data center clusters. The ocean floor is being redrawn around the AI economy. But there's a catch. And it's the one that ties this whole story together. Building more cables doesn't build you a single new repair ship. You can spend billions laying fresh fibre across the Atlantic and still end up in the exact same queue as everyone else the moment it breaks. The building boom is real, the maintenance boom isn't. That's the hidden weakness. Big tech can own more and more of the ocean floor, but it still depends on a small aging fleet to keep that ocean floor connected. So the next time someone tells you your data lives in the cloud, remember what's actually holding it up. Not the cloud, not satellites. A few hundred glass threads on the floor of the ocean, laid down by ships, broken by anchors and repaired slowly by a fleet almost nobody thinks about. The most digital companies that have ever existed are quietly rediscovering something very old, that the internet was always a physical thing. Made of steel, glass, salt water, ports, ships and repair crews. The cloud was never really floating above us. It was always tethered to the bottom of the sea.